One of the worst things about addiction is how it is numbing, and the way it numbs you also keeps you trapped in a downward spiral. The more you keep doing it, the more of this numbness sets in, and the more numb you feel, the more you feel like you need another source of strong stimulation, the more you feel the need for this addictive input in your life. So today, let's take a moment to examine how addiction to pornography has this numbing effect. It's numbing like this on multiple levels. It is physically numbing, it is mentally numbing, and it is also spiritually numbing. And it is worth talking about this because awareness is the solution. So as you're listening to this, simply bring awareness to where can you see this same pattern in your own life? Where can you notice this kind of thing, this kind of dynamic happening to you? And the more aware you become of it, the less of a grip the addiction has on you. So we're going to go into the details of how specifically porn addiction keeps you numb and cuts you off from some of the best and most important experiences you can have in life. But first, to understand better how this dynamic works, like I mentioned, it's this downward spiral. It keeps getting worse, and it is a problem that makes itself worse. To understand this, how this works, here's a simple example. Think about physical health and fitness. We all know that exercising, training, moving your body a lot is super healthy. And in fact, it's one of those things that when you look at the research into what are the effects of exercise, it would actually be easier to list the things that exercise is not good for than to list the things that it's good for. The positive effects on your health, on your longevity, on your happiness, on your focus, on your productivity, on everything. It just seems to affect absolutely everything in a positive way. And this is measurable and has been proven over and over again by loads of studies, right? Exercise is just so good for you, it's completely ridiculous. And on top of that, exercising is a lot of fun. At least it's a lot of fun when you're fit and healthy. Of course, if you have a fit and healthy body, then moving your body feels gratifying. And if you're strong, then lifting heavy weights feels good. If you have great endurance, then running feels good, and so on, right? And the better you are at things, like if you're a great climber, then climbing feels like a lot of fun. For a fit and healthy person, it's easy to enjoy physical activity. It's easy to enjoy training, which makes them even fitter and healthier. But think of the other extreme. If you are extremely overweight, then moving your body feels difficult. If you're completely untrained, then even walking up a flight of stairs puts you out of breath and it doesn't feel good. And if you're overweight, you probably also have joint issues, right? So even if you say, okay, I want to get active, but you're super overweight, then your knees start hurting really quickly. So for the least fit people, it is the hardest to enjoy physical activity. And the least fit people, I mean, it can be someone who is just obese and out of shape, hasn't trained in forever. It can also be someone who's maybe been knocked out by an injury or illness for a long time. Like after that, getting back into it, that's the hardest part. So it's when you're at your worst, when you need it the most, it's the hardest to get the benefits of all this exercise and movement. And when you need it the least, essentially, when you're already fit and healthy and happy and getting all the positive effects of it, then it's easier to do more of it. So this is an example of how the problem causes more of itself and also the solution causes more of itself, right? It's really unfair. The world is unfair in this way in lots of different ways. So that's one example. Another example is that success breeds confidence, and the more confident you are, the more likely you are to succeed. And obviously you've heard the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. The world is full of these dynamics. There's these self-reinforcing spirals where either you're in a situation that keeps getting worse or you're in a situation that keeps getting better. And it seems completely unfair, and it is unfair, but you can design your life in such a way that it's unfair to your advantage instead of to your disadvantage. Addictions in general put you into one of those downward spirals. They create more of the problems that you then want to escape through addictive behavior. And one of the ways in which this happens is through numbing. So let's look at the numbing effects of porn addiction and the downward spiral that creates. So first of all, porn addiction is physically numbing. In very concrete terms, a lot of guys who use porn a lot will essentially have problems really feeling a lot when it comes to sexual stimulation. This is why, as I've talked about in other content, erectile dysfunction, an inability to get hard and stay hard during sex, is on the rise, especially among young men. Essentially, as you masturbate to porn a lot, your penis becomes numb. Part of this is because of death grip syndrome, where a lot of the time when we masturbate, we're basically gripping too hard. And we're getting ourselves used to a really high level of stimulation that when you're having sex with a person, when you're having penetrative sex, you don't get that level of friction and that hard of a grip. And so if you've trained yourself to always get super tight, fast stimulation, then it's just like, it feels like real sex isn't stimulating enough. So that's what I mean when I say it's literally physically numbing. You are becoming less sensitive to sexual pleasure the more you use porn. However, this is not just about death grip syndrome. This is not just about physical overstimulation. Porn is also physically numbing, even if you don't death grip. I don't know why this is. All I can say is that this is something that I have felt personally, and I'm not alone in this. If I masturbate to porn, there is a sense of numbness in my genitals afterwards that simply isn't the same as if I even masturbate without porn or have sex with a person, have real sex. There's something numbing about doing it with porn that seems to be independent of whether you're going too hard or for too long or whatever. There's something numbing about it. And part of it is certainly also that it's mentally numbing. So you're giving yourself all this stimulation, you're giving yourself extreme stimulation. The further along in your addiction you are, and you can also watch my video about the 5 levels of addiction. The further along in your addiction you are, the more likely it is that you're watching like really extremely hyper specifically stimulating stuff. And you're training your brain to respond to this very specific, very extreme stimulus, which again then means that real sex with a real person is just doesn't feel as exciting and doesn't push that button that you've trained yourself to respond to. But here too, when we look at how it's mentally numbing, there's something that goes beyond just the overstimulation. And part of it is because you're probably using porn in order to escape something, to cope with something, to distract yourself from something you don't want to deal with in your life. And that also puts you into this kind of muted, more numb state of being. It moves the needle towards something that feels like apathy and depression. And of course, if you feel apathetic and depressed and you go around and everything feels kind of gray and pointless, then that is also one of those things that makes you want to seek more stimulation. And so the addiction gets stronger. And then also, and perhaps most importantly, it is spiritually numbing. Now, I'm using the term spiritual here, not in a religious context. I'm not talking about any specific ideology of religion or spirituality. I mean spiritually in the sense of when we ask spiritual questions, we're basically asking the question of what is the point of it all? Right? What is the point of life? What are we doing here? What is the point of existence? What is it to be human and live a good life? And in this sense, porn is spiritually numbing and something that cuts you off from what can be the most important experiences you have in your life. Fundamentally, the problem is that porn hooks into one of your most deeply rooted drives. One of the most human things about you is that you have a sex drive, that you are attracted, you feel attraction, you feel desire. And I like the term sex drive because it's there to drive you, right? It's supposed to drive you out there. It's supposed to drive you towards certain experiences. And these experiences are not always going to be easy or instant or pleasant. They're not supposed to be. I think this is one of the biggest problems with turning something as fundamental to our existence as our sexuality into an act of consumption. Of course, consuming porn is completely risk-free in the sense of it doesn't confront you with any of the risks that you face if you want to follow your sex drive elsewhere. As soon as I'm going, well, unfortunately, I feel a desire to connect with other human beings. I feel a desire for intimacy and closeness and sex with another person. That confronts me with all kinds of scary things. What if I get rejected? What if nobody wants me? What if the person I want doesn't want me back? What if I express my desire to someone and they think I'm creepy or weird or whatever? Nowadays, a lot, because of the discourse around dating and there's a lot of like black pill incel type content that's going around, where there's many young men who literally fear, and you can see examples of that in my comments as well sometimes, fear that if they went up to a woman and tried to flirt with her, that she would literally like call the police, that they would be beaten in the streets or thrown in prison for any form of expressing their desire towards a woman. And this is the fear that every man has felt, just blown completely out of proportion. Every man has felt the irrational fear of, it's scary to go talk to a girl, even though like, why, right? What's gonna happen? And we have to overcome this, but if you let the fear run away with you, and of course if you have access to the internet, you can find horror stories about what happened to someone because he tried to get a girl's number or something. Most of those stories will be made up. Some of them might have some kernel of truth, but it can be blown completely out of proportion where it has nothing to do with reality. But as with anything, if you fall down the rabbit hole, you can become convinced of the world being in a way too scary, too extreme, too crazy. Because of course the scariest, most extreme and craziest stories are the ones that get the most attention online. Really what you're doing is you're essentially letting your fear run the show. And if you convince yourself that the world is this dangerous and that you can't possibly go out and attract someone to have an actual relationship with, to have sex with. And if you fall into one of these rabbit holes where everyone's a total doomer and everyone's completely hopeless and everybody's kind of reinforcing each other's sense of hopelessness, then of course it will seem like, well, really the only choice I have is porn. That's what's safe, right? That feels safe. Porn will never reject me. Porn will not call the police on me. Porn will not me too me. And so we end up making the safe choice over and over again. We end up choosing not to follow our drive because that's what feels safe is being in here in front of my screen, nobody else around, it's just me, and I can consume exactly the kind of thing I want to consume. There's instant access to everything. That feels safe, it's highly convenient, it's low friction. And if I follow my drive out there, it's none of that. It's not instant, it's not low friction, it's not zero risk. And this is the thing, it's not supposed to be. Life is not supposed to be maximally convenient and completely risk-free. First of all, life is not safe. It's not a safe endeavor to be alive. And worthwhile experiences are just not like consuming instantly gratifying stuff. And that's not a bad thing. Look, in my own life history, I have had so many struggles with love and relationships and dating and sex. I have done my fair share of suffering, and it's all been worth it. It's been worth it in the sense that there is a spiritual pursuit to it where the fact that I struggled so much with this whole topic, the fact that I felt so unattractive and so unworthy, that I struggled so much to get the attention of women and at the same time wanted it so much, is something that drove me towards many of the things that improved my life. I think this was a huge driver of my personal development that led me to learn a lot about personal development. It led me to develop myself in so many areas. It led me to pursue fitness and understand better how to train and how to be healthy. It led me into building my skills and my capabilities. It led me into entrepreneurship. I would say that my sex drive and my frustrations with attracting women are not the only reason that I pursued these things, but it was always a strong reason. I always wanted to become a better person and a better man, in part in order to solve this frustration. And of course, learning these skills and building myself up and becoming a better man is not an easy pursuit, and it comes with a lot of failure and a lot of setbacks, but in the end, it is all worth it. So in the big picture, this is how it is spiritually valuable to be driven towards things that are difficult and scary. But also, in much simpler terms, let me tell you a story that I remember really fondly. There was years ago, I went on a long weekend to Budapest with a few friends of mine. We were all single at the time, and we were all determined to figure out how to not be single all the time anymore. So we were there to try and learn how to pick up women, basically. This is a large part of what we spent our time doing. We were going around talking to women we found attractive, trying to get their numbers, trying to get them to go on dates with us or invite them to parties or something like that. And it was scary at times. It was difficult at times. It was also hilarious because we did extremely poorly. And I remember us kind of licking our wounds over a dinner at one point where we were like, is this normal? This is crazy how many approaches we've done, how many women we've approached and asked for their number and so on, and how little success we've had. And there's something funny about that, where of course part of it is like, it stings a little bit and it makes you wonder, what am I doing wrong? And it can be tough to deal with that failure, and it can be tough to pick yourself back up and go for it again. But also there's something hilarious about it. There's something funny about it. It's the kind of experience that I don't wish I hadn't done it. Now, even though overall that weekend wasn't a huge success, it was still a lot of fun. We got into a lot of interesting and fun situations, even if it's not like any of us walked away with a girlfriend from there, but we had some fun experiences. But it was mostly lots of rejection, lots of failure, lots of bonding over how hard we were trying and how hard we were failing. And it was totally worth it. The point here is that life experiences aren't only good when they're good, if that makes sense. Like going out and saying, hey, let's go and meet women is not only good if you succeed and everybody ends up with a super hot babe on their lap by the end of the night. It's also a good experience if everyone falls flat on their face and then you get to figure out what you did wrong and you get to bond over the shared experience. The whole pursuit of becoming an attractive man and figuring out how you can get your sexual needs and your needs for connection and intimacy met is not only good once you achieve whatever your goal is. It is good to be on that journey. It is good to be confronting these challenges. It is good to be facing your fears and growing. And your addiction to porn takes all of that away from you, because it always gives you the easy out. It always gives you the easy, low-risk, frictionless way to essentially tamp down your desire, right? If you feel a bit too much desire, if your sex drive is a bit too active, you kind of just extinguish it with a session of porn. You can always keep that under control. You can always keep yourself in a position where it doesn't feel necessary to go out and do the scary thing. So the takeaway here is to acknowledge that there is something that porn addiction is doing for us, which is it's giving us this sanctity from having to do something that's risky. It's giving us this safety from feeling rejected. It's giving us an escape from the journey, right? Because if you're a man and you want to have a good sex life, then that's like having to climb a mountain. It's most likely not going to just happen to you. This is a journey. It is a journey of discovery and development and overcoming your fears. And parts of that journey are really unpleasant. Sometimes that is painful. Sometimes you lose hope. Sometimes you fall on your face again and you have to pick yourself up again and you really don't feel like it. But it is worth being on that journey. It is much better to be on that journey and eventually get there than to just constantly sit down in the valley in the comfort of your little home, jacking off to porn and dreaming of what it would be like to be on top of that mountain. Embrace the difficult things in life, because those are often the best things. So that's all for this episode of the Quit by Healing podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the best thing you can do is simply become aware. Notice what you're doing. Notice what you're escaping. notice the patterns that I've mentioned happening in your own life. Noticing is the first step. I'll link to some related content in the show notes in the description. You can go and watch some deeper dives on some of the topics I mentioned here. And also I'll leave a link to the Quit by Healing program, which you can sign up to right now. If you want a structured program to sort out your porn addiction once and for all in 21 days or less, go check that out.